A contractor just did not go in for rough inspections, closed it up, finished it, took payment from the owner, never to be found again. Big problem. Welcome to the show. We haven't named this podcast yet. If you think of a name, watch it through, drop it in. We literally might use it. I'm your host, Ben Lalez. I run the Ben Lalez Team here at Compass. There are 22 agents on the team. We are the fastest growing team in, I think it's Illinois history. Check your record books, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. Today we're joined by Alex Bach. He is an entrepreneur, developer, general contractor, real estate agent, and overall good guy. Alex, thank you for joining.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Why are you here? What's going on? Tell us about yourself.
Sure. Just a little background about myself. So I started my career in investing and developing, and soon after switched towards the brokerage side. And now I still maintain both, and I try to use my knowledge in both the construction side and now in the agent side to better help serve my clients, as well as, continuously growing and learning.
So today we're going to be talking about how you can buy a house in some non-traditional ways. So what we are typically doing is buying condos, single-family homes, maybe a multi-unit, but we're going to talk about some unconventional ways, typically leveraging building to make this happen. Alex, how many houses have you flipped in your history?
I would say at this point it's close to 50 plus.
And I've flipped somewhere in the neighborhood of closer to 40 or 50 throughout a lifetime. How many ground up new construction have you done?
So ground up, not so many. I'd say I'm on my third project now, so just starting to do that.
Yeah. And how many units do you own, including but not limited to Airbnb?
Sure. So I would say right around 15 units.
And then I used to be a general contractor, so I used to do kitchens, baths, additions. I joke with friends that the only thing I haven't done is dug a hole in green grass. Let's actually just kick it off. Let's start with an example. What we deal with primarily is if people are talking single family home, the conversation often leads to, should I buy something a little bit cheaper and renovate it? Should I buy something significantly cheaper and maybe gut renovate it? So here in Logan Square, Bucktown, Wicker Park, a single family home that's really nice, you can probably get into something turnkey for 1.3, 1.4 million. So often people are like, okay, maybe let's look at 7, 8, 900, maybe even $1 million and do some varying degree of renovation. Let's start with why they should run away. Why should you never fucking do that?
First and foremost, the major thing is it's construction budget. If you don't have a realistic sense of like what that is, a lot of people kind of try to jump into it, interview one contractor only, look through HGTV and say, hey, I can get this done for $100,000, $200,000, when in reality, they're talking about a $200,000 to maybe $400,000 budget. So that's first and foremost as the reason why you shouldn't do it. Exactly.
It can be expensive, especially if you don't plan appropriately.
I think the biggest benefit doing this is one, you gaining equity in your home, and two, gaining a home that is truly customizable that you do like. But in order to fully maximize those benefits, you want to make sure you actually get the equity when you're doing the construction. Back to the kind of example that we were using. Let's say you purchase a home or a condo for $700K, right? And then you're budgeting $300K to get it done. And let's say everything goes right, you just gained $300,000-$400,000 equity.
If it's worth 1.3 on the back end.
Exactly, if it's worth that in the back end. But let's say that construction is a little bit off, that bleeds out to 400, 500, and then you're all of a sudden all in for a 1.3 valuation, and then going through all that stress, doing the work, months of timing. Is that worth that extra equity of $100,000?
The biggest con is you can completely mess up on your construction costs. Right. What else?
Second biggest con, I think people don't stress this enough, is just the stress of going through this construction process. If you haven't done it before, there's a lot of moving factors, architecture, contractor, design, having materials being on time. We always say you can always budget and say, hey, this is gonna get done in 2-3 months, but then one contract doesn't show up, something gets delayed. That 3 months can become 6 months, 7 months, 8 months.
So price, time, stress.
Those are huge things though, if you really think about it. So especially if someone that's never dealt with it again before, you gotta be expected to, again, hold off maybe 6 to 8 months on some projects.
These are like the expected cons. These are the things that you need to plan for, right? These are your contingencies, contingency budget, contingency time frame. What are some of the nightmare scenarios in building?
Biggest thing is, let's say the contractor's not showing up on time. And especially when you're building ground up, everything kind of has to be on schedule. And if one thing doesn't go, like this tier 1 doesn't go on time, it gets pushed back a few weeks. Biggest nightmares are just not having the right contractors. And, we've kind of worked with people throughout the years, so we have a good trusted group of people. But especially, if someone's looking to purchase the home and looking on Yelp and Google.
House.com, Angie's List.
And trying to say, who can help build a contractor, and going through a list and not really knowing the right questions to ask, it can be a nightmare.
I can think of 2 nightmare scenarios. One is a contractor just did not go in for rough inspections, closed it up, finished it, took payment from the owner, never to be found again.
Yep.
Big problem.
Yeah.
You need to go through like the permitting and zoning process again. You need to find another contractor who's willing to do like remediation work to come in and finish someone else's work. Huge problem. The second and probably less like problematic is like you just get someone who does shit work. If you can't find the right person, like you're gonna get a shit product, you're gonna get shit finances, you're not gonna get the end result that you were hoping for. All right, so we covered the cons enough, and I wanted to lead with the cons because it's not all bad. We both had a lot of clients that end up having a really good result financially, like aesthetically, they love the home that they live in, but they did it right. So you have to avoid those pitfalls. What you think the biggest benefits of renovating?
Sure, I would say it's like really twofold. One is the equity, and second is like having the home of your dreams. And as far as the equity piece goes, like in Chicago, I talk about this with you all the time, Ben. It's one of the few large cities where it is still possible to get a house or a piece of land, $500,000, $700,000. If you're looking at LA or New York, you're spending millions and putting hundreds of thousands renovating to get that. So in Chicago, it's very affordable, and it's something that everyone should at least think about taking advantage of. There's no perfect home. That's why I tell my clients all the time when we're looking.
I really believe there's 100 right choices that are going to give you a really great home in the end. You can like make mistakes and like build something that's really yours, and you can build, this piece of artwork that kind of is you.
Right.
So I think those are the pros and cons of like a big renovation, and people need to consider all of it before they dive into something that is that big. And you can literally pick up the phone, call Alex or myself, go to benlalez.com, click About Us, and you can
get a free consultation at the very least.
When and why someone would dive into a new construction conversation?
Number one reason I can think of is, let's say you're looking in the market and you don't see anything that you like, so you decide to go out and build it yourself. And especially if you want to be in a specific location. I like to use Lincoln Park as a good example. You want to be in Lincoln Park, you want to have this house, you have your funding ready. It makes sense to do new construction, especially if you're going to be in this home for, let's say, the next 5 to 10 years and you see it as a long-term home.
I think, and of course there's some other stuff. You want to have it be exactly the way you want it. There are people who don't, in Lincoln Park, a lot of people build these monsters because they need to max out something called FAR, but like developers want to max out. So if you don't want to build what everyone else has, it's a good option. What are the major, downsides of building ground up new construction?
Major downsides, I would say, budgeting and construction and time, the aspect of all that.
Time is going to be even more so on new construction. It's going to take over a year.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I'm sure you've seen articles on national home builders, where they're delaying projects 6 months, 1 year, 1.5 years. So delays happen, especially nowadays when, materials are always like up and down and like delays and everything. So you have to really be expected to that, especially if you're in a temporary housing situation before you decide to move into your new home. You could end up being there for a year and a half.
And then ground up new construction, kind of dissimilar to a renovation, you're almost certainly going to be bringing in a bank.
Yep.
You're going to deal with a lot of red tape, lien waivers.
Right.
Shoot me in the head. I mean, you too. Yeah. That's like the worst part of construction and building altogether. It's more difficult by nature than a renovation.
Right.
More decisions. And obviously that time.
I mean, the number one benefit is ground up new construction. You are literally pouring the foundation, putting up trusses, putting up drywall. That you're literally getting the home that you want. So as long as you work really closely with your architect and your contractors, you can literally build your dream house. And this is like, if you want a bar in your basement, a bar in your room, golden toilet, anything that you want.
Give us your biggest horror story. Worst shit that has ever gone down.
One of the big horror stories is like early on in career when we were doing a home, we decided to not pull permits. And again, this is early on, decided not to pull permits. We tried to get a quick addition on without anyone seeing. Got caught. That project, long story short, ended up getting delayed, I think, for like 8 months. Had to like redo it. ended up selling it. We ended up relatively unscathed, but it was just a lesson learned to like not try to sneak something like that.
You got no gray hairs, but
Get your permits.
the National Association of Realtor finds that the share of first-time home buyers is older than ever. The typical first-time home buyer, the age went up from 33 to 36 years old, and the typical repeat home buyer went up from 56 years old to 59 years old. Why?
The first thing that pops in my head, honestly, is like people getting priced out of the market. Maybe these people need to be in their jobs a little longer, or a year or two, get one extra bonus to get a little more money to be able to save up
Houses
for a
are
down
more
payment.
expensive.
And the second thing I can think of, honestly, is just that in general, our society has kind of shifted. Like 20 is the new 30, 30 is the new 40. When a lot of times my clients, when they are expecting a child or have a child, that's when they want to jump to buy a home.
If you watched this podcast, if you're a regular viewer, you'll find that baby boomers have a lot of disposable income, and they were just beating out everyone else. So you have like some of these, the 65 to 75-year-old group, they were consuming real estate at like a really weird clip. And I think that's kind of skewing it. So the next article we have, it's a little bit more local, and it's from Crane Chicago Business. So the percentage of homes that went off the market in 2 weeks dipped from 44% to 7%. What do you think about that?
That's a huge percentage drop, first and foremost. I mean, that's massive.
Ultimately, homes are staying on the market over 2 weeks at 7 or 8 times the rate.
More.
So welcome to the new market. Not that it's a true buyer's market, but it is incredibly more buyer friendly than it was in, let's say, March or April. And then on average, homes are selling at 95.3% of asking price. What does that tell you?
Houses are staying on the market more, and you're able to negotiate a better price for
Buyers
your
have
home.
more bargaining power. So we're talking about November versus November of 2021. The number of properties under contract is 30% lower. We're kind of saying the same thing over and over and over again. Guess what? It's a much more buyer-friendly environment. Please, God, do not wait until June when there's an interest rate drop and buyers come out of the weeds and we start having multiple offer season again. 15 surprising facts about real estate. Over 17 million Americans spend over half their income on rent.
Rent is too high.
Staged homes sell 3 times faster.
This is 100,000% true.
The average home purchase takes 51 days.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and 42% of buyers believe real estate is a better investment than stocks.
Right now, I would say that is absolutely true.
So that's your market report. Right now, we have 65 homes under contract. If there's anybody who has their finger on the pulse of the Chicago real estate market as us, please, God, just listen. Nope, ignore articles, listen to Alex and I. I honestly got mean that. We are going to be drafting the best movies with a Chicago spin on it, either set in Chicago or
Filmed in Chicago.
Filmed in Chicago.
I mean, honestly, I'm going to go with the classic Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I love that movie. Being the generation that I'm from, is a classic.
I think that's a solid first pick. My first pick is going to be Rookie of the Year, obviously Wrigley Field. There's the old Comiskey.
Yeah.
Did you know that it doubled as one of the away teams as well?
Second pick, going a little bit straight here. I'm going to go Candyman.
Candyman.
And it was a classic from when I was a childhood, and I thought the remake was great.
For my second pick, I'm going to go, it's just a lot of nostalgia, Home Alone. I think you have to. I know it's Winnetka, but it's a classic.
Third pick,
Go for
I am a sucker for rom-coms, so I'm going to go The Breakup.
Okay.
Love Vince Vaughn.
I'm actually going to go with the Blues Brothers. I don't think there's anything more classic Chicago. There's a lot of Pilsen scenes in there. I don't know if anyone knows that. Fourth pick.
You know what? I'm going to go with Transformers. They had the one I think it was Transformers 4 that was filmed in Chicago. They had the iconic
You're going to
scene.
go with Transformers 4. For my final pick, I'm actually going to go High Fidelity. A huge portion of it takes place in Wicker Park. You got the Music Box Theater in it, and Millie's Supper Club, Smith and Walensky Steakhouse. All right, that's your draft. How do you feel about your team?
We're going all the way.
So now we're going to answer some internet questions. So a buyer says, I just received the closing disclosures for my first home. Closing is set for next week. Is it normal to feel panicked?
I think it is normal, but that's going to soon turn to excitement as soon as you go to the final walkthrough and realize that the next day, that home is yours.
Yeah, I always say there's a fine line between anxiety and excitement. If you bought a $700,000 home and you got a 3% interest rate, your monthly payment is the same as if you bought a $500,000 home and got a 6% interest rate. All else being equal, keeping taxes, HOA, whatever, insurance the same. Crazy. Does that mean that you got a good deal on the $700,000 home?
Yeah, I mean, that's case by case. It's hard to say.
This is what
it's a
I would
tricky
say.
one.
Yeah, what I would say about this one is I really believe that people who bought, even if you like overpaid, you got usually in Chicago a better house. Your buying power was way stronger with those really low interest rates.
Right.
If you can get that home that's priced at $550, you have to negotiate down, and then if you refinance, you'll still be in a good spot. Alex, your global real estate transactions, how many have you done lifetime? 100?
Yeah, 100.
How many gifts have you gotten from your client?
I would say probably about maybe from like 5% of people,
so that's
to be
the
really
question,
honest.
is getting a closing gift. Should I get my agent a closing gift?
Yeah.
I would say no. We make enough money. And you know what's the best closing gift you can give, Alex?
I'm going to say it. A referral.
A referral. And then is buying a new build too risky with all the unknowns in the market?
I think we just hit on that. It really depends. Situational.
A lot of it depends on the actual contract that the developer, get a lawyer and get a good agent and get an agent who understands the nuance of new construction. So for those of you who watched, I hope you learned a little bit about what it takes to potentially renovate an older home, learned a little bit about new construction, feel comfortable that you can reach out to us at any time. Again, I'm Ben Lalez. We run the second largest team in the entire city. Please don't hesitate to reach out, leave a comment, let us know what you want us to talk about next. Thanks for joining, Alex.
See you guys.